We're going to go ahead and get started now. If I can ask everyone who is not one of our presenters today to go ahead and mute themselves just so there's no background noise, I would appreciate it. This is the IWLCA webinar called Drills, 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 and we've got a good lineup of coaches here today to share some information with you. And basically the way we're going to run this is each of our 4 presenters is going to have about 15 minutes to present on a certain topic. When they introduce themselves, they'll go ahead and tell you what their topic is, and then we'll get started. If you have any questions for a specific presenter while they're talking about their drills for their topic, you can use the chat feature to send them directly to me. I'll show up as IWLCA in the chat bar on the right. And if you send them to me at the end of their time, if they don't run over, we'll go ahead and ask those questions that are specific to them. If we're running behind, we'll probably end up holding all the questions till the end, but we're hopeful that if these guys are efficient, that we will have some time at the end to do an open Q&A. So if there was something that wasn't covered that you're curious about, you'll be able to ask them. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves now, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our first presenter. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm Steve Wagner from the College of Brockport.
What are you presenting on, Steve?
Oh, we'll go through the whole thing.
Just tell us that for the intro.
I'm putting my zone offense up there and then how to kind of build it from the ground up.
Phil, you're next.
Oh, Phil's got a black screen.
Yep, Phil turned his, there he is. Phil, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Phil Barnes from University of North Carolina. Hello, Heather Crutchfield.
Thank you.
And we're talking about transition, just some of the things that we started to, just discussions that we had this past year about transition and the way to go about them, and a couple of drills that we went back to using this year, and just some thoughts of how transition is changing maybe in our game and in the men's game also.
Scott?
Scott Tucker, the head coach at Limestone College, and I'll be going over effective pregame warm-ups and drills associated with it.
Great. TK?
I'm TK from Rollins, covering a couple defensive drills that we can use, especially if we go back in the fall and we got to think about social distancing and whatnot. They are some drills that we used prior to actually the whole shutdown, but it could be things that you can incorporate into that.
Perfect. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and go through, and we're going to turn it over to Steve first. And take it away, Steve.
All right. Sorry, I'm an analog person. I'm old school. This is how I function. I don't want to panic in front of a screen. This is our basic zone offensive setup, and I just want you to see kind of the spots that we're in. What we're looking for is a diamond, one person behind cage. The D and F is you want this person in a perfect world. I'm a Division III coach, so these don't always line up. You want driver and a feeder up top of the point of the diamond, and then behind cage. Those are really important spots to have people that can kind of do both. These wings definitely have to be your drivers. These are going to be the ones that are going to be looking forward to draw a shooting space. And if you got a nice lefty over here, if you have a driver and a feeder over here, that's nice because most of us in Division III are loaded with right-handed cutters on the inside. And then what we try to do in the inside is we try to approach it with kind of 3 different levels. And this is the easiest version of this, where we've got one cutter basically that goes side to side underneath these hashes, right? And it works out to, if you've got 2 good attackers, these 2 will rotate, but you can also hide your worst attacker in here and just keep those crease defenders occupied as that ball moves. Then we have one cutter that works underneath, but elbow to elbow, not all the way side to side. We're trying to slide against the pass-offs of those backside defenders or whoever's helping mark. So we're thinking about east to west. And then I load one cutter right up this driver up top here that takes advantage of any open space that happens this way. And then when the ball is up top, they just kind of rotate out so they can be a threat on both sides. But I came to this from just running zone for a lot of years and kind of just put in a bunch of stuff that gave us problems. And when I came up with this, we had a pretty seasoned team. So, you know, we put it in, it worked pretty great. And then this year we had a bunch of new kids. So we had to kind of like really dumb it down. And can we see this side over here okay? Everybody? Yeah? Okay. So to start it out, and like I said, I'm going from a Division III perspective where like we might not even be able to just make these passes amazingly to start. So what we do is we put the people in those spots, and we created just a simple passing drill that is absolutely those looks. And what we're doing is just in your diamond, set of balls at each piece of that diamond. And what we're doing is starting the ball. So you get a group of 4 players. Start with a ball at any of these spots and rotate through. And each person handles the ball and starts the pattern. But what you're looking for is we're looking for 3 passes. And we're looking for north to south and east to west. If you have to make, so the ball, let's start it back here. Ball starts behind cage, right? Pass out to the wing, that's just a 1 pass, right? That's over top of 1 defender. What we really want to try to do is get those big skip passes in those north to south. That's okay. So there's our 1 pass out wide, and then 2 pass here, and then if we get to our 3rd pass, we're attacking. So it doesn't matter where the ball's coming from. We're just trying to get them in the habit of making these big passes. And these drivers are in between this second hash and this elbow, and they're out wide. If your field has a football field, we usually set them up like out by the numbers a little bit to get them really wide, because we're trying to look for the shooting space. So this really is almost just a shuttle where we're just trying to get comfortable with them making those big passes. What we really want, though, the looks that we're really looking for are the east to west, this big pass, or the north to south. Like, that's what we're trying to accomplish. These little quick passes here are okay if you kind of drive against the zone, but for the most part, we're just trying to get them comfortable understanding those spaces, right? And this attacker is just going to support whatever side the ball goes to. So if their first pass goes here, and then next pass is a big cross one, this attacker is just going to support this opposite side. And you want to put all your drivers in that spot. And that's how we started out. Just so everybody understands, like, these are the big passes we're making. We got to get our hands up. I think a lot of coaches make a mistake and try to do the big concept. And it's like, I got to go smallest common denominator. These are the passes. I would suggest when you put it in, you can just have these be lines that people rotate through. You don't want anybody following the pass or whatever. You're going to pick your players on your team that are good at those spots, time economy, and put those in the spots. And then when you get closer to like games, you want to start putting the 4 people in together that you think are going to do that. So first and foremost, to beat a zone, you got to make those big passes. That's what we do. And the next thing we do is a really simple slide drill that's actually kind of unfair for the defense. I'll put my defenders in blue. 1 on the crease. And then our driver spot, our driver spot, our driver, and our attacker, okay? And then what the defense has to do, and it sucks for them, but we start the ball in the middle, and as that ball rotates over to the corner, they have to push, slide to become a backer, and then rotate, and totally just selling out the backside so we can start to see that 2v1 look. And when it rotates down low, they still need to get a backer. These defenders have to communicate whoever the backer is. Sometimes it looks bad and it's a large space to cover. But what we're really trying to do when we move it to these corners, we're just trying to get them comfortable seeing that backside with the 2v1. So after that defense is rotated, right, we got a backer over here. And this defender has shifted and rotated towards the ball. We just want them to get comfortable rotating and seeing that pass. And then this attacker is always going to support ball side to either occupy this defender, or if she catches this pass, we're going to rotate it around and try to get to the backside. So we start there and we go really simple. And then, and the emphasis on that is we are just trying to get them to see the 2v1 on the backside and know that the open spot on the zone is that backside. And it's not always this, right? Sometimes it's the other attackers and we get more people in. But all I really want them to learn is once everybody pushes over here, this is where we're trying to get it to. So we make it really easy at the beginning when we're teaching them, and then we get a little bit more complex. Because the thing is, going against zones, the two biggest weaknesses of the zones, right, are rotating it to the 2v1 on the backside, cutters in the middle if they're bad at marking cutters. But another thing that we try to exploit, and in this drill we try to finish with a shot, is we try to then see that the 1v1 on the backside, usually zone defenders are not as competent or don't have as many reps in practice 1v1 defense. So if we're in a game and they're doing a good job matching everybody up, but we're still getting the 1v1 at speed over here, we want to hit it. So then the next version of that drill, so after they kind of understand the 2v1, and we're really trying to encourage north to south passes, east to west passes, right, to make those defenders' lives hard, we add it in. So we have defender. Do I have another marker? And then we just add in an all-time backer that has to work and rotate with those passes. So to the corner that backer is going, and then we're still hitting that skip pass or that high to low drive spot. So if it moves from up top and the backer's back here, and we move that ball up top, we still want this person being aggressive and driving against the 1v1. So the next level of this is we throw a backer in to start. And then you can start the ball wherever you want. I like to try to start it, get a group in there, have them start a ball at each spot, just a pile of balls in each corner, pick it up and go so they can get comfortable moving the ball. You don't want your defense trying to step out and steal passes. You just want them to get comfortable identifying that the backside's got no backer, and we're going to try to drive against it. So then we build to that spot. Once we've done that and we're good at that, we add in, so they still have a backer, we throw in one attacker in the middle. That these defenders are now responsible to slough off their girl and help mark in the middle as the ball moves around. So that backer is still the all-time backer on ball, but these 4-point defenders have to slough in and help the middle. So they can start to see as the ball moves and the responsibilities change where exactly that gap is. So if the ball is directly behind cage and the backer's committed there, it might be this top pass that we're looking for. So instead of just looking for like one piece of weakness in the zone, like the 2v1 on the backside, then we look to see if maybe we've got our space there. And then, so that's our driving stuff, right? And we want these guys driving against their defender and looking to feed to the inside. And that's what that next phase is. Because if you can drive against the zone and still feed and still take this look, you will have some opportunities. How am I doing on time, Danny? I'm going too fast? Let's see. Oh, no.
You have 4 minutes left.
Perfect. So after we get through that, then what we try to do is we completely reverse it. And I'm going to take my buddy's popular defensive spy set, and we'll reverse it where we don't put defenders on the outside, and we'll put 3 attackers in the middle, right? And we're going to try to put them at the levels that we've got over here, right? So for me, this is just a straight V cut. The only thing this person does when the ball is anywhere other than up top, they just live in this V, side to side, right? Side to side. That's what we're looking for. So we'll take a popular zone concept, and I like to throw in different kind of packages on how different teams mark. But if you take Tucker's zone, old school zone, and you go spy, 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 and then if the ball is up top, this person is the backer. If the ball is on this side, this person's the backer. If the ball is on this side, that person's the backer. So what we'll do is we'll put our cutters in there at our different levels, right? And then we will just move that ball against the zone. No pressure on these drivers up top yet. And we're just trying to move the ball and see the gaps that open up from those spies. So if the ball is over here, right, and this person has become the backer, right? So we've got this person that rotates out to become the backer over there. Backside's going to have to come over and help, and we're going to try to just keep on manipulating those levels. And there's all sorts of like crazy ins and outs to it. Like, you want it to almost look, when the ball in our zone offense, if the ball is on the elbows, we want our cutters in the middle to be kind of 1, 2, 3. So we're attacking 3 different levels of that zone, making it hard to cover. We don't want to have one cutter being able to be marked by 2. And the other thing we like to do in this drill is really try to understand the pass off. So if that ball moves from up top to here, and this backer has to go then become the backer, this cutter, instead of just running right over to this spy to help him mark it, we work really hard on just trying to see that space when we do this. So the feeds are still good because they don't have any pressure up top there, and they're working on levels. And then when the ball's into the north-south points, we're trying to get a look that looks a little bit more like a triangle, right? So if this person gets the ball and drives, they have these looks. So north to south, right? We're trying to do a wider triangle and be east to west. When the ball is east to west, we're trying to do north to south, working back and forth against the slides so we can open up those gaps. And the thing of it is the thing about a zone is something has to give on the backside, right? I haven't seen very many teams successfully step out and take away the skip pass without marking up people in the middle. So basically, if they're going to overcommit resources to the backside, then you're going to have to look inside. I don't like having 2 players behind cage against the zone because you can easily trap on one side and you can shut off that pass with your crease defenders. I like to have these crease defenders constantly rotating and shifting. And then if you've got 2 good attackers, then and you don't need just a body in there, then you can start building these attackers to rotate around their sets together. But I think the biggest thing for me is when we started having success with our zone offense is because we took each phase of it in practice and really taught it to them. And I failed this year. We went against Clarkson and we didn't go through all of these steps. You know, I thought we had enough veteran people. We didn't. So we kind of had to get back to it, and then COVID happened. So those 3 sets of drills, that building up, I'd be super happy to communicate to anybody. I know I went through it fast. I was really worried about my time frame.
Steve, I did get a few requests during your presentation to draw this up so that we can send it out via email. So if you can draw it up and scan it, we'll send it to all the participants via email after the fact. So
and anybody that wants to talk about it, this was kind of intimidating for me to do, truthfully, because nerdily we've accomplished this over the years, just taking it piece by piece. So there's like so many different variables that we can add into it. Like anybody that wants to talk about how to beat a zone, this is one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, I'll draw it up.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Since we didn't get any other questions, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to Phil Barnes for the next segment of our presentation. Again, if you have any questions specifically for Phil while he's talking, you can send them to me via chat and we'll ask them at the end. And if you think of something after Phil's done, send them anyway. And if we have time, we'll do a general Q&A at the end.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to go through a couple of drills and some thought behind what we're doing at Carolina. We talked about this year, and then maybe where we're going, and just, you know, constantly thinking about the game. And I think that's something that everybody can do, because, you know, it's, as you got to have conversations about lacrosse. A lot of times we all get caught up in some of the, not the minutia of what goes on with our team, but we end up getting caught in the day not necessarily talking about lacrosse, watching lacrosse, seeing lacrosse. And in the end, that's the reason we're here. And so I think everyone really, you know, really wants to be part of the game and see some of this. So, you know, the first thing we talked about this year, we looked at our strengths on our field, and our strengths are really on both ends of the field. And our midfielders, you know, we had a few of them, and, you know, we thought, like, where do they impact the game? How do they impact the game? You know, how maybe necessarily, how do we conserve some of their energy? How do we maybe use more middies? And so we had this discussion back and forth, and what we ended up getting to is what do we want to do? And we started talking about pushing the ball. We're like, all right, what will this create for us? And obviously, it always puts more pressure on any defense. And so just something to know. Then we're going to go through some drills and talk about a little men's lacrosse trend, and then we're going to watch a little film. So, like I talked about earlier, we talked about our strengths of our team, what our midfield depth is. And then what we really started to break down is who were some of our best athletes and competitors. And that really started to separate some things, because I think everyone has really good defenders who aren't midfielders for whatever reason. And it could be what your needs are. It could be maybe an overall stick skills. Maybe they have competent stick skills, but not amazing stick skills. So, we started looking at this, and what we started to see is that, our kids who really like to compete, why are we limiting them? Like, don't limit your best athletes and your competitors. And we're like, and how do we kind of create fast breaks? And what started happening is that our defenders, as we started to go back to this, our defenders became really, looking for the right term, but they ended up becoming, really aggressive, because they want to score goals. They want to be part of it. And, we started talking about, like, well, what are some chances? Like, is it really easier to score in 5v5, 6v5, 6v6, 7v6? Why get in this game of you transition the ball up slowly, everyone's set 7-on-7, you just heard to talk about zones and making sure you're set up and things like that. Well, one of the best ways to go against a zone is don't let them set up. Don't let the defense get organized. Keep them on their heels. And I think that's something that, the men's game has started to really progress towards in the past few years. Yeah, and then, the other thing is, like, everyone's a fan of uneven drills. Your players, it's probably the number one thing that they all love. And so I think that's something to consider. It makes practice enjoyable. Like, they love playing uneven games, uneven drills. And then, the next piece of this is that, everyone loves to score goals. Like, who doesn't love to score a goal? I mean, it's the bottom line. Like, it's part of the game. And when it gets down to it, it's the root of the game. You got a ball and a stick, and the objective is to put the ball in the cage. So, that feeling, whether you score the goal yourself or you're part of the goal, that goes a long way. And again, it keeps everyone engaged. Now, the catch to this is that, you gotta have persevere through this, and you're gonna have some failure. And I can tell you that we did at times, because we hadn't really run this much since maybe 2012. And as we try to bring this back, into our game and part of our overall philosophy, it required a little bit of commitment and patience on our part, because it's not pretty. And so, let's be clear about a couple things, that you need for this. Stick skills. There is a difference between stick development and most effective. The number one thing that I can tell you, I'm always saying in practice, when I see someone catch the ball with their strong hand and their right, and because it's been drilled into them that they're supposed to catch right and then throw left every single time, it's not necessarily the most effective. And so I think if you keep that in mind, because it's slower. You can't, no one's ever going to tell you it's faster. And there's a reason that the best players in the world are Canadians, Native Americans, anyone that spends a lot of time playing box. And there's not a lot of switching hands going on. So what is the most effective in the end? And for us, we feel like you got to be able to catch with both hands. Can you complete a pass? Yeah, but there's no reason why you're in the middle of transition, you can't catch, with your strong hand and throw a ball much further than with your non-dominant hand. Some other keys in this is, eyes surveying the field. You got to listen to each other. Number one thing. You know, you got to always be surveying, and you always got to be listening. You know, you got 2 ears, 1 mouth. There's a reason for it. And obviously, you know, you do have to communicate, but then there's picking up on those nonverbal skills. When people pop their sticks up, you got to know that. You got to see it and feel it. Another big thing for us, spacing on the field. Width is more important than levels. And when we watch some film, you guys are going to see it, because you start to create width, people start to wonder where you're at. If you stay narrow, it's pretty easy for a team to go straight up a line. But if you're using the entire field and using the width, some good things start to happen. And then obviously, you know, going back to the best athletes, confidence and competitiveness. I think I'm missing an S there in competitiveness. But the bottom line is, you know, you want your best athlete, your best competitors in there. So this is one of our go-to drills. In the past, we haven't done this drill as much as we did a few years ago, and we went back to it and we stuck with it. And yeah, it was ugly. I mean, it was fairly ugly. And the bottom line is, you do this drill, your kids figure out how to run the field. You can do it from a loose ground ball. You can do it any different ways. But the number one thing here that we really stress is, you know, you got to get wide. You got to get wide in the field. Now, this little arrow up here, this doesn't need to be a cutback. Sometimes you can just catch over the shoulder and let it go, and you're in good shape. But the biggest thing is, you watch all, you know, things we talk about. Get wide, see the ball, and you gotta run. And I know there's a couple of our Carolina alums watching this, and they've seen it, they've done it, and you gotta run. You gotta have your players get the confidence that you can pass the ball all the way down the field in 3 passes. And again, this didn't start out pretty for us, but as we started doing it more, it started to happen. The other one would be an exchange on this. You can go back and watch the video. You don't have to write this down, and I'll make everything presentable. Someone's marked, you know, just exchange. But you got to practice that. Moving on here. This is another great one, and this could be any ground ball scenario at the top of an 8-meter. It can be right around the center circle. It can be off a restraining line. And there's 2 different ways to do this drill. And you can start it with a loose ball. You can start it anyway, but there's some basic concepts that you have to understand. Everyone's got to be an option. And so it's not a drill to do the drill. It's a drill to learn about lacrosse in the game. And there's a big difference. Don't do the drill to do the drill. Like, it's got to be something that they understand. They understand why they're doing it. You know, praise them when they do good stuff. Ask them why they did things. And, you know, the bottom line is here, if you're next to somebody, you guys can all see the ball right there, you know, that person who's next to it, you got to get out of the way. You got to create some depth and some width on the field. And for the person popping up, and this is the drill. It's 3 passes, you know, and that's the way it goes. Go to the next one. You know, next episode, this is obviously just adding defenders, piece of cake. And again, this is to the ball to the outside, because the rules suddenly change. Now, you know, the ball goes to, you know, it suddenly ends up one of the inside players. Well, what happens? Same kind of rules. You're next to the ball. Get away from it. Create some depth. You know, you can see somebody who's on the outside of the field is ready to pop up. You see some ball movement here. You can see all these different passes. And any of these things, nothing is scripted here. Nothing here is scripted when we do this. The bottom line is just basic rules, loose ball, getting up, getting confidence, you know, getting the ball down the field as fast as we can. You know, so now I'm going to kind of move into, we're not going to cover this much, but just understanding that, you know, where the men's game has gone in the past 4 or 5 years is that they're changing some things. And what they're changing is the fact that they're not necessarily, everything's going to be a classic 4-on-3, and it's called, for those of you who don't know, it's called an L break. And pretty much what they're always trying to do is create a box. They're always trying to create a box. You know, some of these teams now, you know, what they're doing is that they're making more use in creating different types of scenarios, 5v4s, 5-on-5s, 6-on-5s, 6v3s. What they call is a flat break. And what they do is that, you know, as the ball gets closer and closer, that one attackman is sneaking behind the cage. And the reason they're doing it is because the player behind the cage is they're unpredictable off ball. And you get in defenders' blind spots. And when the ball does get behind, I'm not saying you have to do it sooner, but if there's a threat back there, things start to change. And the defense starts to turn their heads to the back of the off-ball players. And so in the men's game, they're leaving their long poles in there. They're leaving their short stick middies in there for longer. And the reason doing, they want to see what they can get off in a scramble situation. And again, it's somewhat, you can't say it's, everyone loves offense. There's a reason the NBA, took away, the defense from, from the 1990s when Jordan played. Like that game does not exist anymore. Okay, defensively in the NBA. It's why there aren't holding rules in the NFL. You can't do the same thing. People want to see offense. And this lacrosse is, it's more fun. It's your kids love playing uneven. They love playing unsettled. So, what this might look like in our game, like here's just a simple thing. Somebody comes down, you can already see the player. They've moved themselves behind. You can see the different options and where people can go and where you can draw your 2-on-1s and what that might look like. So, and again, different things for different ways. And this could be a whole nother discussion, but just the idea, start putting start to put your head around it. Start Googling what's going on and, in men's lacrosse, because in the end, it's one of the games that definitely translates to women's lacrosse. Obviously basketball does. We've been watching a lot of handball at Carolina also in terms of like how to break zones and, and how to move. But, you gotta know what's going on in all different games. And obviously men's lacrosse is the closest thing to the game of women's lacrosse. I'm gonna escape here now and show some video. Danny, how am I on time?
Phil, you can probably take another couple minutes, but that's going to eat into our question time. So we'll just ask anybody who has a question to hold till the end. So take another 3 minutes or so.
Perfect. This will be short. So just for a reference, so we got a shot, goes out of bounds. You can see right away, you can see right over here, I got my little arrow. I hate the little draw things, but you can see how wide this player got immediately. Now, obviously, they knew the ball went out of bounds. Some people are turning, but this player streaked over here to get wide. This all starts to create some things. So there's options everywhere. Obviously, they're in some type of a zone ride. That's not good, but you can obviously see some of the width. Let me go back here. I'm going to go back to this clip too. There's some things. Save. Again, point out to that girl, look at the width on the field. It's not necessarily about height and getting down, it's about creating width. You can see everyone here starting to break to different areas. And this just starts to create lanes. These guys are playing right down here. It's like, all right, this is good. Ball goes out of bounds, and soon you can see everyone breaking right away. People are looking. There's some width everywhere. Here, again, we got width. We got a kid streaking. She should be looking. The goalie wanted to hit her. I was like, oh, can't hit you because you weren't looking at the ball. Now, obviously, she wanted to throw here too. They weren't looking either. So you can start to see kind of what this looks like as you're supposed to move around. And last clip. So, clips. Here's from some other part of it. Ball hits the ground. We're talking about that passing in fours. Well, here it is. You can see this player right here, shoe streaking wide. I hope this isn't too dark. I want to go back here. Watch the player on the opposite wing. These are both starting low defenders. Now, the curious thing that we found out about all this is that this saved our middies. It gave our middies more legs in the second half because our defenders were such a threat. I'm going to fast forward through some of this. Here we got one off an 8-meter. Loose ball. Everybody's fighting for it. You can see people starting to break wide on the field. And once the ball went wide, it allowed the middle to be open again. And you can see all this. Fast forward, we're going to do one more clip after this. Again, this is that 4-person drill, and this is a defender. And the middies are running with her. You can start to create different things. Again, try to get away from limiting your defenders because they're defenders. They may not have the best stick skills, they may not have the smoothest, but as you can tell there, it's more of a mindset, and it will create opportunities for you. That's all I got, Danny.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. Will, I didn't get any specific questions about that except for, people asking if you would be willing to share your PowerPoint with them. So if you are, we'll send it out in an email later this week once we've got everybody's handouts. I'll turn it over to Scott Tucker.
I will do my best here to, everybody can see that now. Again, a lot of the drills will be sent out after. I'm not going to take the time to kind of go through all of them because obviously with the pregame warm-up type drills, there's a number of them. So I will get you all of that, but I'm going to kind of go more into the philosophical look at the pregame warm-up. It started off more as necessity from some of the experiences we had. But the purpose is obviously to highlight some of the things that the pregame warm-up can do for you, especially at the start of a game. Everybody's probably had that game where you started off slow. When it becomes consistent, that's usually a problem that, you got to look a little deeper into. So what we did was kind of took some of those aspects and kind of really tweaked what we did in pregame. And sometimes it's as simple as just organizing your already existing drills and put them in a different spot. But we'll kind of go through this. We'll approach it and kind of why we do it, the process, obviously the expectations, and we actually give the team a schedule of or an agenda of how the game will look like as far as the pregame warm-up, right down to the very minute. And then obviously the drills that we utilize as we're going through that. Obviously the big why is that the obvious one is prevent injuries, right? So we don't really need to discuss that, but I do want to encourage you to get if you have strength coaches or if you have an athletic trainer, have them go through your dynamic warm-up, or if you do a static warm-up, have them go through the proper way of doing it, because there's a lot of times you just put them out there, they go out and do it. It's literally a waste of time if they're not doing it right. So I would briefly touch on that, but really the purpose of this is kind of take back that first 10 minutes of the game. There's a lot of things built into women's lacrosse, such as the stick check and a lot of things that, create a lot of downtime. So we try to build some of that up, before the game goes, and then actually add some things right before the game starts. So we also want to try to build some confidence with the players, not create more anxiety for them. Players don't like change ever, realistically. So we try to create something that's pretty consistent. It doesn't mean you can't ever change it, but if they can go into that with one less thing to worry about, and have comfort in the drill that they're doing, they're going to be a lot more successful and a lot more engaged in that drill as you're getting ready for the start. Obviously, we really want to attack the emotional part of it too, not just the physical part of it. And I think a lot of it, is mental, obviously, in our sport. See if we can get this moving here. So really I use the team when we do the expectations. So I want to know what they want out of the pregame warm-up. Obviously, we try to guide that. But use your team leaders. If you're comfortable with your seniors, have them be involved. And we literally break it down to the exact time we walk out onto the field, the exact time we walk off the field, even having a process after the national anthem that we do to kind of get our legs moving again. But let them be a part of that. You know, you want to, whether it's what you're wearing out to the field or, you know, whether you're wearing practice jerseys during your drills or whatever, have all that stuff laid out beforehand so you're not stressing about really, honestly, irrelevant things that don't need to be stressed about right before the game starts. We give them the schedule, an agenda as it leads up, and we want to really minimize some of the anxiety and the mess with the, you know, even superstitions. If you change something last minute and kids are used to doing certain things, really a pregame warm-up is not the time or place to make a quick switch. And it takes a lot of self-discipline as a coach to not get mad watching some of the drills or, you know, seeing some of the things happen out there. But, you know, one thing I always try to tell other coaches is it's okay to not watch your warm-up, because the last thing you want to do is make your players more tense by yelling at them in a pregame warm-up drill. There's nothing you're going to drastically change in that pregame warm-up that's going to make a huge difference in that game. So you really want to avoid that. I had to learn that the hard way as I went through it. Obviously consistency, we want to try to keep things going game to game. You know, again, if you change one drill, it's not the end of the world, but we actually practice the pregame warm-up. I think that's important. So you're not, like, again, you want to go out there, you want them to feel comfortable, you want them to look good, and you want them to kind of hold themselves accountable to what you're doing out there. And if they already know what they're supposed to do and they have confidence in doing it, it's going to go a lot better, a lot smoother. And again, drills may change year to year or even one drill here or there throughout the year, but try to be as consistent as possible. Minimal contact drills obviously is important for this, hopefully minimizing injury risk. We try to design the drills that will hit the basics, things that were relevant to our offense, relative to our defense. Obviously, we want to get some stick work in and some obvious things that you would do during any of them. But some of them, a lot of the drills we do try to target multiple things, so you're not just picking one thing at a time and going through it. And again, I'll share some of the drills in an email with everything lined up for you. But the sequence of that drill is important too. What we really try to do is kind of build up the momentum throughout the warm-up. You know, there's a lot of ups and downs, you know, the way the game goes. So we try to keep things built up. So that last drill we're doing is the best drill we're doing. It's the most fun for them, which is okay. We want them to have fun while they're out there doing that. And sometimes I have to bite the bullet and let them have the drill they want. But almost every kid out there, and coach, a couple coaches already talked about it, they love transition drills. They love unsettled stuff. So you can kind of use your 4v3s, 5v4s, or add-in drills and kind of build that up, because one, it incorporates a lot of different aspects of the game, but it also creates excitement right before you have to walk off the field and do the stick check. So this is probably the most frustrating thing for me with the warm-up, is having to do these stick checks, line up national anthem. So you're looking at a 30 to 40-minute warm-up, and we do about exactly a 33-minute warm-up. If I have a larger roster up around 30, 35, it might get up 35 minutes, 36 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. But we honestly keep it really short. We all know players hate to warm up anyway, so really fighting that battle is not worth it. We truly try to keep it minimal, do the drills that, you know, some of the drills that they like. We try to bring them into the decision-making process when we're doing that with obvious guidance. But what can we do to minimize some of the cool down time that you get from the stick checks? And obviously the lineups and the anthem. So we honestly, little things like just telling them only bring out 2 sticks. You know, you can't control what the other team does, but you can control what your game administration staff does. If they're prepared and you're not waiting around to fumble with the national anthem, that's going to give you a little bit more time. Well, some of these things seem obvious if you don't do this stuff in advance, and you only really have to do it once if you have a consistent staff, or spend 5 minutes on it before the game, or a staff member on it. If you don't have a consistent staff, everybody has different resources. But what we also do, and we started this a long time ago, but after the national anthem, while they're all lined up out there, instead of jogging over to the coach, we have them actually run away from the coach, go to the other side, straight line together, show some unity, and then on the way back, they're sprinting. We try to get their legs moving right before we go on the field. It's amazing how much just little things like that can make a big difference. We had a season where we were probably in about 5 or 6 one-goal games, and some of them not against teams that, you know, we felt we should have been one-goal games with. a lot of it was attributed to a slow start. That first 10 minutes of the game, I felt like we were losing that first 10 minutes consistently. It didn't matter who we were playing. Whether we won or lose the game is irrelevant. It became a problem. And I think if you're winning the games, you tend to neglect those things as you're going through it. But, we found ourselves in really tense situations and games, and just a simple tweak of the order of the drills we did made a huge difference. So that's now kind of what we do. We try to implement the drills that we felt the players are really comfortable with. We allow them to get that emotional, keep them calm essentially, and try to not add to that anxiety because they know what we're doing next. Players don't like not knowing, obviously. So we try to do that. And this is my pitch. If we can get even half of you guys to submit a rule request to eliminate the stick check, we already do stick checks in our game, especially the college level, but even the high school level, I think it's an unnecessary part of the rules. And I think it's not in the athlete's best interest for the warm up. When you're picking your drills, going to here, let's see. So we'll go back to this. So this is just an example of what we give them prior to a game. They work on this with us. It goes from anything, we have to be really strict on if the announcer forgets to play the music, don't stand in the tunnel waiting to come out. Just come out anyway and get it done. Because if one little mess up can screw up your whole warm up. So we really try to break it down all the way down to what they're wearing and how it's worn. How many balls we bring out, whether it's a home game or away game. And it really honestly takes the pressure off the coaches to have to coach in pregame. The last thing I want to do is watch my warm up, to be honest with you. It doesn't mean I won't run a drill, but I try not to sweat the little things if they're making mistakes doing drills or not looking great. Because quite honestly, if they're comfortable with that drill and not doing well, they know it and they're holding themselves accountable. They'll get frustrated with each other. We don't need to add to that. The other thing, what we post in the locker room, this is all on the same page, but I just put it on here in separate so you guys could look at it. And I'll include this when I send out the drills as well. But this is kind of our pregame warm-up outline or agenda or schedule, whatever you want to call it. And it's literally right down to the clock hitting 0 and clearing the field for the stick check and lineups. And you can see some of the drills on here. This is from 2 years ago, actually. So we made a change to one of our, for example, the flipping 4v3 drill. We were awful at it in the fall. We were awful at it in preseason, so we took it out prior to our first game. We were great at it in the past. So little changes like that, and maybe adding something else that you're more successful at, it really will depend on your personnel and obviously, what they're comfortable with. Let's see what we got here. So picking the drills, utilize the staff that you have. Everybody has different resources. Not everybody has, my strength coach doesn't come to the field, but more so as a proactive measure. Again, going back to make sure they're teaching the proper way to stretch and the proper way to do the dynamic warm up. Get that off your plate if you can. Teach it the proper way. No one's expecting the coach to go out there and tweak what they're doing, stretching right before the game. But take that off your plate right away. Consider the flow of the warm up. You don't want a big high in the beginning, then a low, and then right back at it again. Kind of build up that intensity. We start with stick work type of drills. We might move into position-specific type of drills, and then we'll move into unsettled play, 3v2s, 4v3s, some of those type of drills. We try to avoid coaching during the drills unless they ask. They have a lot going on in their mind right before a game. They have to remember game plan, scouting report, their roles, and obviously adding to that adds stress. So we try to take that off them from the beginning. I try my best not to say much during warm-ups. I honestly try my best not to watch warm-ups because it is frustrating to watch. If you want a good start to that game and you're watching them drop the ball every 4 passes, that can be frustrating, but usually doesn't translate to the game. That usually can clean itself up. Everybody has a different philosophy on this, but we do avoid contact drills. We aren't going to do one-on-one, 7v7 or anything like that on a pregame warm-up day. And we also try to avoid 8-meter drills where they're standing around. I know I've seen teams will do 8 meters at the very end of their warm-up. So now they're adding 5 to 10 minutes standing around right before we stand around for 10 to 15 more minutes right for the lineups and the anthem and stick checks. So we always save our best drill for last. The one they love, but also you get the most out of. We do an add-in drill. It builds up from a 2v1 all the way up to, you can go up to a 7v6. We usually finish at a 5v4 for pregame days or in game days for the pregame warm-up. And that usually gets them fired up. And again, it's okay to not watch the warm-ups. You don't feel like, try to preoccupy yourself. You want to be there, but you don't want to necessarily be overthinking what they're doing on the field. And again, we'll send out a bunch of the drills. If you guys have questions, you certainly can email me directly. If you want something specific after you see the drills that I send out, be happy to help with that. And I also wanted to plug the IW does have a drill book that is awesome. I think just about every coach that attended the convention has contributed to it. So there's a variety, well-organized, well-thought-out group of drills in there to look at. And again, this is my information. If you need it, feel free to email me. Or you can call me. I'd be happy to discuss anything that we're doing, but I will be specific with the drills when I send that out with very specific direction on how to do them. And that's all I got. How'd I do? Time-wise, anyway.
You did perfect, Scott. You set a high bar. I hope TK is going to be able to follow you.
Social distancing.
I don't know, Danny. Is anybody left anyway? So there's probably not many people left. So.
I don't know. There's still over 150 people.
Dinner time. So, all right. So, thank you to Scott and Steve and Phil. That was really good stuff. Trying to see here. I'm going to talk quickly, I guess, here about a couple drills. I actually started doing them back in the fall when we were doing a lot of our individual work. And lots of times I'd have one kid in for individuals or things like that. So I needed to come up with a way to cover some things that they needed to work on. And we got tired of doing the same footwork defensively and those kind of things. And one of the things I started to really look at is our kids' awareness. And we hear that all the time. I coaches, kids got good awareness, And I'm for the life of me, for years, I've been trying to figure out, how do we work on improving awareness? How do we get kids to be more aware other than experience? So I was actually talking to my dad one day, who's a big NASCAR fan, and he was talking about a driver, Richard Petty, who's one of the greatest of all time. And he was talking about his awareness on the track and how his peripheral was greater than 180 degrees. So he literally could see behind him practically. And that just gave him such an advantage while he was racing. And so as I was thinking about that, really awareness comes down to seeing. Like, can you see things as you're moving around and focusing on one point? So one of the things, I actually went back and checked with my kids, and we started to look at their peripheral. So we would do the old test where you put your fingers out in front of you and you just start to move them out away. And wherever you stop seeing them both at the same time, that is how your range of peripheral. And I started to notice that our kids that were the most aware were also the kids who had the best peripheral vision. So my goal came, how am I gonna stretch this out? How am I gonna get these kids to work on their peripheral? And it also goes along here with now keeping some of our social distancing things that you may be able to do in the fall, where kids don't have to be so close. They don't have to be playing the game to work on the peripheral. So the first thing we do, and it's quick, it's 3 or 4 minutes, kids can get a ton of reps. And this drill right here we call shoe fly. And basically you can have your kid in pairs, one standing behind the other, and you're just gonna simply, let's see if it loads. All right. They're just gonna simply get in a good defensive position, and then they just move the stick up outside of their peripheral vision, and they're just gonna try to be aware. Now, you could start to look at my kid here cheating with her eyes. You don't want them to do that. You want them to focus straight ahead, and you're just slowly moving the stick out in front of them, right? And as you get more complicated, you can start changing the plane along with the level, how it comes, right? So it's a pretty simple drill. They can just take turns doing that, maybe 5 or 10 reps, and they'll really start to stretch that peripheral as they go. I was talking to Wags this morning about peripheral, and we were talking a little bit about this, and he said something that this drill right here, it's another drill that we do. It's called gumdrop forest. And essentially, if you look, we set up 6 different colored cones. And as the kids get better, I use different objects, but it's basically 6 cones around them. And Swag said that a lot of peripheral vision is also memorization of something that you saw. So in this drill, we'll set them up in the center of the cones, and you can't hear it on the video now. I have it if I send it out. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to call 3 different colors. And what we want them to do is we want them to approach the first cone. So I think, I don't remember what colors I said this, but I think my first color is blue. But I want them to find the first cone and use their peripheral vision to find the next color, or maybe even the next color. So a couple things I need to do that the kids, they'll try to cheat and memorize the cones. Again, we don't want them to do that. Lots of time I'll have them face backwards, or while they're waiting in line, not be able to look at the cones, or I'll have them come to the center and spin before they go. So here, let's see, we'll see what the cone colors were here. Just kind of explaining the drill. So getting set, she's in, again, a good defensive position. And I'm just gonna yell out the colors here. It really works on using your peripheral and finding things as you're moving. So a couple things you have to make sure that they do not eyes the cone. So sometimes you can't see it, right? And then sit all the way around. I'm just gonna call out a color sequence, and we'll start really easy. We'll just go green, yellow, blue. She goes green, yellow, blue, back to the center, okay? So she's trying to get there as quickly as she, and we want to make sure that we don't have a lot of wasted space. So what I mean by wasted movement or wasted space is if I call blue, yellow, red, I don't want Olivia turning here and then going to yellow and then maybe turning and trying to find red. We don't want that. We want to use the peripheral to find the cones as we're moving from one to another. So related to lacrosse, if Olivia's covering a cutter, cutting through the 8, and she sees someone cutting on the backside, that peripheral will pick that up, even though she's focused on her cutter. Okay, so here, let's do it again. We're gonna go, ready, purple, red, yellow. Oh, there we go, we got it. Ready, let's do it again. Ready, green, yellow, red. She finds green, she finds yellow, gets to red, boom, back to. So it's a pretty simple drill. But again, so we'll set these up like maybe 3 or 4 circles next to each other. And now we start racing. And one of the really cool things, again, that I noticed is my fastest kids were not the best at this drill. My kids who had great awareness usually would beat out those faster kids on a regular basis. So again, I thought it was something really neat. Again, social distancing, you don't need to be near anybody, but working on peripheral. And then here we, as we get advanced, we'll throw a stick in there and we'll work on either dragging the stick from the cone you were just at, or, getting your stick towards the cone that you're going to. So just adds a little more defensive flair in that drill. Also, as we get better, I'll add tennis balls, footballs, soccer balls. So now their brain has to register tennis ball, football, make the circle bigger, make the circle smaller, just different ways you can mix it up. But again, a good social distancing kind of drill that you could use, and it helps on awareness. And it's fun. It's a really fun drill. Next thing I want to talk to you guys a little bit about is Coach Short and I are huge on really trying to steal things from other sports. Like lacrosse is great, and there's a lot of great resources. But some of the other sports around, basketball, soccer, football, there's so much money invested in research and training that we don't take a good enough advantage of. And we go out and steal a lot of stuff often. And one of the things that I stole, I'm not sure if anybody's a football fan, but there's a left tackle in the NFL called Joe Thomas. The guy played, I don't know how many thousand games in a row, but I was watching him talk, and he made a point of, he used to talk about defending the player. And so I was thinking about that. We do a lot of it in lacrosse. We focus on the player, especially in our man-to-man defense. And he said he had a change of a philosophy where he started, instead of defending the player, he would defend a spot. He knew where the quarterback was going to be, and he had to protect that spot. And it dawned on me that, especially in our game, the spot that we have to defend is that spot that's, 4 yards out in front of the goal by maybe 4x4 square in front of the goal. Like that is the area where most of our goals are coming from. And if we can keep people out of that spot, we are going to be much more effective on defense. The game is designed for offense. It's not designed for us poor defenders and defensive coaches. It's designed to score goals. So we have to try to take every advantage that we can. And so as I was watching that interview with Joe Thomas and he was talking about his technique, I started to watch his technique as far as pass blocking. And if you watch this and you just watch it's called a kick step slide. It's really effective. And if you watch this, we're talking about, think about a ball carrier that's a little more athletic maybe than our defenders that we have. How are we going to stop that kid from doing what they want? And if you just watch this, and I'll relate it in a second to lacrosse, but if you just watch the initial, it's a 4-second clip, but you watch his initial kickback. And I started to take that and look at that, and I said, I think we can really use that in lacrosse. One of the things that we kept finding ourselves doing was our defenders on that initial step would really open up, and you'd see their left toe, or if they got right foot up and they're forcing out down the right-hand alley, that left toe really opens up, and it gives that driver really the lane to go down. So we started to really focus on our footwork, and this comes a lot from Shorty, who's been doing a lot of shake school and working on breaking dodges down to the smallest movement. And so I said, you know what? I want to break down our defense footwork to the smallest movement. What is the first step? And ladders are great, and all those other things are great, but let's break it down even more. So we started breaking it down to this sequence of footwork that I have in a video, and it all starts with our approach. And again, I talked through this on the video, but I'll just kind of voice over it as we go. The first thing that we do here is our approach, and I'm using a men's lacrosse stick here just only because it's 6 feet long. You can use cones, other things, and we really work on our approach. And the first thing you're going to notice is on Olivia's approach, we go hard till we get to about 6 meters, and then we're going to break down our approach to which way we're going to force. So right here, she's going to force to her left, or force the player to her left. And we're really working on getting to that spot where we have that left foot up so she goes as hard as she can. So we call big, big, little, little, right? So it's pretty simple, nothing new than what most of us do on our approaches. Then we're going to go to the next sequence here. And here in this sequence, I want a couple things that I want you to look at. So we're going to start in a good square defensive posture. And we're just going to work on those initial kick steps. And you'd be really surprised how difficult it is, right? It's we're going to just have Olivia go through here on some of these. And she's working on some things like really keeping that left toe in, not letting that toe flare open, right? Because that's going to give up that alley when she does, right there. That's the first thing I see a lot of my kids do when they're starting to retreat. So we really work hard on just getting those toe kicks as fast as you can, right? On my command, she's going to give 5 toe quicks, right? Quick toe taps. Here in a second. I'm still talking. There's a shocker. That's excellent. Then we'll switch up, and she's going to go the other way, right? So we're doing a couple things here. I leave them in this position right here a little bit. So we're building some strength in our hamstrings and our quads. And we're really working. Again, most of our weight's on our inside foot. But we still, we're probably about 70-30 right now as far as weight balance. So go ahead, Liv. Good. Switch them. Okay. So Liv's dragging a little bit. We'll run through that sequence like 3 or 4 times, and it's as quick and as powerful as you can go. And she just so it's really working on staying low and staying square and watching that toe and that heel. And you're going to see all your players, if you try this, that heel starts to sink in and the toe starts to sink out, and that's going to leave them vulnerable to getting beat. So here we go to the next step, and we go from there, and we literally break it down this slow with our kids and working on it. Let's get it along here. So next step we go. Again, it's really breaking it down, but now we're going to start working on actual step movement. That wasn't a great one for her, but that's nice and low, and it'll be on my 3 commands. So she'll do that. We switch legs, And again, we're breaking it down slowly. So there it is at full speed. Right there, let me back that up a little bit. So now she's working on that full speed. All right, so now we'll go the other way as we do the same thing, right? So she's gonna go full speed, boom, straight back. So if you think about back to the defensive stick, as she sets her approach and then breaks down with that staggered step, as the attacker's starting to approach, she's gonna use these drop steps so that the attacker now doesn't get a read on what she's trying to do. We're staying nice and square, and we're gonna let that attacker make their move, right? We want them to give it away. So here we're practicing changing the angle of drop. So if a player's really tight, we take a very narrow drop. If the player's really wide drive down the alley, she'll take a really deep progressive drop from there, right? So these are things that will just constantly pounding. Again, no attackers, just focusing on that footwork, focusing on staying low, focusing on that technique. And now I believe here she's going to drop step and now turn and run, right? So let's see if I can get to that one. So she's going to use those drag techniques, and now she's turning and running, okay? So again, it's just me and the defenders, not can do this by yourself, but it's about that quickness. And one of the things we talk a lot about our kids is visualization. Like, you got to visualize that you're going against an attacker right now, right? So you're going to drop and open up. And again, I'm talking, so if I do send these videos out, it's got a lot more detailed explanation on what we're talking about or what we're focusing on with her as we go there, okay? Next thing, obviously, is when players start to change direction. That's one of the first things coach is talking about is, how are we going to stop when that player splits you or rolls you? And what you see Olivia doing right here is something that we see all the time with our defenders, right? They playing us, they do a really good job playing us. And then on that first cut, they open up, look at that left toe open. And now that just gives them the alley of where we're going. So again, watching and listening to Joe Thomas about that, like what if a player inside rolls you or spin rolls you to get to the quarterback? They use what they call a step-up technique, right? So that she's going to continue to step back. And as they split, instead of opening, we teach them to literally step up into that path. And again, this took a lot of time and a lot of work for them to understand that once we get them going in a direction, we want them to continue going in that direction. So opening our hips and letting them turn us is not really ideally what we want to do. We want to try to avoid them being able to change direction. So we're aware of that. One of the other things that I haven't pointed out is a lot of it is a lot smaller, and we want to keep our feet different from what we've taught for years. I want to keep my feet as close to the ground as possible. We can't change direction when our feet are in the air, and good attackers will know when a good defender is going to step. If our feet are on the ground or as close to the ground as possible, and that's why we call it kick, step, slide. So we're kicking, but we're sliding that front foot and almost never having that foot off the ground. We're really staying grounded to the ground as much as you possibly can. You're going to keep those feet grounded as much as you possibly can. So Olivia's working hard here. It's about 500 degrees humidity here in Florida. So there she's just working on that. And it's just step over and over and over again. Same routine, okay? I got a couple of videos I want to show of our kids doing it. And I'm going to give you a video. First thing is going to be of our kid doing it. I want to dare say incorrectly. So this is the way we used to teach it. We watched this kid here, and so she keeps getting flipped and turned. And that's actually one of our best defenders, but see how square she is? Traditionally, this is the way we were playing it. And we just found that it really, really wasn't working very well. And then I'm going to show you a quick example of a kid who does a really good job of it. So she's keeping those feet grounded, staying square. That's a good step up. Good. So just a little example of it actually in person. Let me stop sharing here. Yeah, so it's definitely different. Took our kids a little bit of time to get used to, but I feel like, we have to be willing to change, have to go out on a limb, try different things. And it has been super, super effective for us, especially when we get those matchups with those defenders who aren't as athletically gifted as the kid they're going against. So they need an advantage. And there's a lot more to it, a lot more detail. It's hard to cover in, 15 minutes. But if anybody has any questions about that, you can always contact me for sure.
Tom, we did have one question come in while you were talking, and they wanted to know if your videos that you showed on your YouTube channel are public or private.
They're public. I mean, they're private right now, but I certainly can make them public. I just shot those yesterday. We have a lot more where we go into overtraining. So we use the bands to really speed up those kick steps. And, at first, I don't know if I was a strong believer in it, but as I worked with our kids and just the different philosophies of keeping your feet on the ground, we talk about, you're always hearing about, get your feet moving, get your feet moving. We've worked the opposite way. Like we want to have quiet feet, right? And it's really helped our kids be confident and understanding a plan and just keeping those feet nice and quiet and not giving away what you're trying to do or what you're going to do. And it seems to really have helped us. But I can make those public for sure, Danny.
Perfect. I'm sure everybody will appreciate it. The only other question that we had come in that was for Scott Tucker right after he finished up. Somebody wanted to know, Scott, if your pregame warm-up or dynamic agility is the same one you use for practice, or if you do different things for practice warm-up than your game warm-up.
The dynamic warm-up is exactly the same as we do for pregame. We don't change that. So.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, we did get a few questions emailed in before the session, so they're not necessarily related to what you guys spoke about, but since we have time and I haven't gotten any other questions, I'll go ahead and ask a few. Somebody wanted to know if there's a really good drill you can recommend for teaching ball help slide, and more specifically, how to teach defenders to see the whole field, make quick decisions, and communicate effectively, which I'm sure you could do in just one little drill.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to the awareness thing. Like I feel like, I think it would be interesting for every coach to go check and see vision that kids have. You can't slide if you don't see it. It just doesn't work. So to me, I think that is really the ultimate goal, is to try to expand that peripheral. So that would be my recommendation.
Any of our other three panelists have anything specifically they'd suggest for that?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to TK on that one. Tie a rope to him so they can slide together.
He's talking that we used to. I described our pull sequence as a push slide or a pull slide, and lots of times we have what we call pull slides. Meaning, if you think about, if I had a rope attached to my adjacent defender and I go, the rope literally pulls that person. And at that point, you're probably a little late in your slide, as opposed to if we had a push slide where my adjacent defender sees it coming and literally pushes me out of the way to go to that next, to be this first slide. And that's just a visual I think a lot of kids understand.
I stole that from TK, and it helped a lot explaining the different sides of their defense, push and pull.
All right, well, in these last few minutes, since I haven't gotten any other questions, I'll just ask each of you to just go through and give us your final thoughts on any advice you can give to the people that are watching on how you come up with drills, whether what's your favorite resource for finding drills, or if you come up with them on your own, or if you farm it out to your players or assistants to ask them what they think will work. So we'll start with Phil Barnes.
Thanks, Danny. We just spent a lot of time talking about lacrosse and watching it. And it's the bottom line. And I alluded to it earlier, getting caught up in some of the other stuff that goes on when in the end, like it's how are we breaking it down? I think is TK went through all that. What it reminded me of is, there's a men's Twitter account, or maybe it's an Instagram, but it was with the old UMBC defensive coordinator who's now at Hopkins. And, I've never seen, when you start to break things down in such a small way, it's a game changer. I mean, it's an absolute game changer. I think a lot of times, we just want to get out and play because the kids want to get out and play. And so obviously there's a fine line. You got to keep the fun into it, but you also have to explain some of those smaller things, like something that small makes a huge impact, and they'll appreciate it. You got to explain to them why you're doing it. You just can't tell them. Explain, show them, repeat it, and then they'll start to feel it. But it's, breaking it down to a much smaller level is really what the difference is, because most of the bigger concepts they're always the same. But, when you're able to break it down like that, that's impressive. And as you said, he's watched other things, he's picked up on it. Like, that's the bottom line. And, unfortunately, though, it's not just our game. And so there's a lot of other things that we do as coaches. And so it's understanding that fine line. How do you develop mindset and everything else that needs to happen within your program and in the game? But you got to remember the two reasons you're there. One is to, help develop young people, become better people in life through the game of lacrosse. And so those two things are really important. And you gotta treat them both equally, and probably, less so than most of the paperwork, the minutia, even the recruiting that we all get caught up in sometimes. Take care of the game and take care of help your kids become better people and your players become better people, and good things will happen.
Thanks, Phil. Scott?
As far as creating drills go, I mean, I think like every coach, I think you steal it, you adapt to it. You adapt it for your team. I think the more you talk with other coaches, even outside of the sport, obviously we've talked about that a little bit, but, whether it's efficiency of practice, or game day or plays or drills, I think there's a lot of resources out there, not directly with lacrosse as well, that can really make a big impact on that. And obviously your personnel is going to dictate the success of a drill. So if you take a drill from somebody else and it doesn't work with your team, don't take offense to it. You're going to have to tweak it. But try to do some of the analytical stuff prior to trying it out with your team. Make sure you have the right personnel for it, because what you don't want is to have that wasted 10, 15 minutes of practice, trying to do something that maybe you weren't ready for. But again, be open to new things and don't be afraid to ask coaches that aren't even lacrosse coaches.
She's muted.
You were muted, Dan.
I love to steal and then adjust when it comes to like maybe some larger concepts if I'm like stuck in a rut. A lot like what TK said, like I got obsessed with the way that running backs block, because they are dealing with space where they have to approach and just push them off to the side. So I've stolen a lot from football over the years, and a lot of the footwork drills and stuff I do with cornerbacks. But when it comes to your own stuff, I just try to build drills for the specific skills of the stuff that we need to do. And I'm not afraid. Sometimes, like, my team knows, all right, ladies, I put this one on paper. I don't know how it's going to play out. And so, we kind of laugh, because sometimes I'll bring a new drill and the player's like, not everyone can be 100% coach. Like, right? Like, I'm sorry, this one looked amazing on paper. And in Division III, we don't generally have the time with our team to, like, fall ball is like we're just trying to get our sticks up and camaraderie and all those things. So I don't have any extra hours to play with stuff. So I'll throw a new drill in and just let the team know, like, working through some logistics of this, and then don't be afraid. But don't be afraid to steal is my biggest thing. I go through that IWLCA drills book and steal something, and I always end up having to change it for what we're doing. But sports are sports, and if you can pilfer from other places, that's the thing. And just like TK nailed it, those people are investing a lot of money into making sure their movements are the most efficient. So that's where I root around. Probably the opposite of Phil. I try to stay away from – I watch a lot of film, to make me a better lacrosse coach. But when it comes to exploring other sports, I try to stay away from lacrosse and steal from people that have dedicated more money and resources, you know. But don't be afraid to try new ones.
Thanks, Steve. TK, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Shorty and I changed our philosophy a long time ago is we don't have a book of drills. And we spend so much time teaching the drill and they don't really get the concept of what you're trying to learn. So I would try to keep your drill packet as small as possible, but then tweak it for whatever focus you're trying to get at that point in time. So the setup of the drill, the rotation of the drill, all of those things that take time to teach and get them to understand, you know, if they're all basically the same and just tweak where you're coming from or tweak the philosophy or maybe tweak, you know, give some rules here and there, restrictions. I think that makes it go easier and it's fun. And then of course, same thing. I said it several times. I steal from all over the place. You just have to. And again, I also think what Phil said was really important is that these kids, I find the kids now, you know, I think for most of us, especially us are elder, let's say, you know, your coach would tell you to do something and you just did it. And you didn't ask why, you just did it the way they told you to do it. And that was it. And I think our kids now want to know why you're asking them to do something. And I don't think it's disrespectful or mean. I just think it's their thought process. So to me, I've started to just start with the why. Like, this is why we're doing this. And they're much more receptive of, you know, we're just going to do it this way. And it's because that's the way I want to do it. You know, occasionally that comes out in me, but for the most part, I think that's really important is that, you know, they know why you're doing something. One way to do it is to have one of your kids or have your kids run the drill in practice, but not just run the drill, explain why things are happening. And you,
Well, I think that was the hardest part about this is like my drills are super simple and I just pile a bunch of stuff onto it. So it's like given a 15-minute window of like, then you do this with this drill, then you do this and you do that. And if you keep it within that same structure, especially I'm at a state school, man, like we've got to, how much time am I spending in practice explaining this concept? And shout out to Bree Borelli, who came over as my assistant and just basically was like, that's too complex. Just do this. It's like, you know what? She's really good at keeping it simple. And I mean, that's the trick. Like, how many reps can we get in? And if I'm explaining a new thing every day, then we're not getting those reps in.
Good advice, Steve.
With D3, you don't have the individual time. And I think the hardest transition for me from D2 to D1 was a lot of the pre-work that you do to teach people how to get open and handle concepts you do in individual sessions in Division 1 and Division 2. And in Division 3, you don't have time for that. So you need it to be thinned down and build off a concept of something that everybody grasps. Otherwise, you're wasting time, especially in upstate New York when it's cold out. You don't have time to sit and talk through a drill. So sorry, TK, but I agree with you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone that presented for your time, and for everyone that participated. You'll get an email by the end of the week with all the different resources that the presenters referenced, and I'll also include their contact information so that if you have any follow-up questions, you can email them directly. Take care. Have a good night.
thanks.